It's a rainy day outside, and it seems most appropriate because today's Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, the month in which the great flood occurred, and this Shabbat we're going to read the story of Noach and the flood. You know, it was this year, 2020, January 27th, marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz by Soviet forces and troops. And in Israel, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, leaders from 46 countries gathered in Jerusalem at Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Memorial Museum that commemorates the atrocities of the murder of 6 million Jews. And 46 nations, representatives, there were presidents, there were prime ministers, there were vice presidents, there were princesses, there were kings there, and they commemorated the greatest tragedy known to mankind, the Holocaust. And one of the speakers was the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Meir Lau. Rabbi Meir Lau, 82-year-old survivor of Buchenwald. He was 8 years old when he and his brother were liberated by American troops from Buchenwald. And he became not only the chief rabbi of Israel, he came to Israel at the age of 8, having been liberated as a child, rose to become the chief rabbi of Israel, and the voice and the moral conscience of the memory of the 6 million in Israel and throughout the world. And he addressed these leaders from 46 nations. And he posed the following question to them. He said, you know, we read the story of Noach and the flood, and God flooded the world. And Noach took his family and animals from every species into the ark. And he asked these leaders of the 46 countries, how is it that all of these animals, the wolf and the lamb and the tigers and the lions and the cheetahs and the birds and the snakes and the reptiles and the dove and every creature lived in harmony and peace and didn't attack each other, didn't kill each other? How did they survive in the ark together for a year's time during the flood until they were able to leave the ark? And he looked at the leaders of these 46 countries and he said the answer is because they realized that they're all in the same boat. And if they don't get along with each other, they will all die a vicious, horrible death at the hands of each other. And so realizing that they all coexisted harmoniously and lived in peace. And Rabbi Meir Lau, the 82-year-old survivor, looked at these leaders and he said, if the Holocaust taught us one thing, it's that we are all in the same boat. And if we don't learn to live together in peace as there's flooding, raging waters all around us, then it will be to our own peril. And he looked at these leaders and he said, you as world leaders have the power with the signature of a pen to alter the life and the future for millions of people. And it's fascinating that these words were spoken on January 27th. The very next month, a pandemic broke out worldwide that has taught this lesson to the whole world, that indeed, no matter where in the world you live, we're all in the same boat. And when we look at the raging waters, maybe not flood waters, maybe not forest fires, but when we look at the raging floodwaters of the pandemic, we look at abuse, we look at anti-Semitism, terrorism, violence, and we realize that we are all in danger if we don't learn to live harmoniously. And we have to look at this week's Torah portion, and for our own benefit and for the survival of mankind, we have to realize it's in our personal interest to live harmoniously and peacefully. This Friday, shockingly in Paris, an 18-year-old Chechen entered a school building where a teacher had taught the students about the Charlie Hebdo story of the caricature of Muhammad. And just as a way of freedom of speech, the teacher was teaching the course and showed the students the caricature. And this 18-year-old Chechen came in and beheaded the teacher. And this week, just yesterday, thousands and thousands of people protested in the streets of Paris, saying no to terrorism, no to violence. We must live peacefully and harmoniously. But on a good note, yesterday, Israel ratified and signed the peace accords with Bahrain, following the peace accords with the United Arab Emirates earlier this year, showing the world for the first time, yes, there have been other peace treaties in Israel, but it was always with strings attached. It was peace for land. But for the first time, we've seen two new agreements that are peace for the sake of pure peace. Peace for the realization that all of our lives will be so much better if we learn to live together peacefully and harmoniously. And so as we go through the raging waters of the pandemic, anti-Semitism, terrorism, and all the other ills of society, including hatred and violence and abuse, and we're seeing today poverty and hunger, let us band together and live in harmony, realizing that we are all in the same boat, and all of our lives will be persevered and elevated through our mutual love and devotion to each other. Have a wonderful day.